Portrait photography to me it's different for everyone. It means different things to different people. People have different techniques. They have, there's street photography, there's fashion photography, in terms of portraits. But for me, portraits is, like I said, I can't stress it enough. It's, for me, the portrait photography that I do is a direct relation to my feelings, which is why I think when people critique my work and they're unfair about a critique, or when they don't understand it, I take it very hard, because I don't take pictures for other people. I take pictures for myself. The only reason why I'm still alive is because I have that outlet. I have that means of feeling better. When I take pictures, I feel good about myself. For once in my life, I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of myself. So to me, portrait photography is a lifesaver. Literally. It's a lifesaver, and it's a way of life for me. And without it, I can't even imagine where I would be right now. So to talk about my work a little bit more, for years I was doing, if you go to my website, KarenJerzykPhoto.com, you will see that I have all my images broken up into sections. So I have one section called the Last Days of Earth section, and that's the biggest body of my work. It's probably about 75 photos. I've done way more, but it's 75 of my favorite photos from all the on-location shooting I did, mostly abandoned places. And those photos were definitely done during some of my worst times, when I was feeling really depressed, after my father passing away. And I typically use females in them. I shot a lot of nude work too, simply because I think a body that is not covered in any sort of fabric has its own story to tell. There's something very visceral about a nude body within decaying walls, and it's just very emotional to me. Almost a kind of beautiful sadness, I guess, and that was what I did for years, and it really was, really good therapy for me. And when I would do that, like I said, I would just bring my camera and a tripod, and I was trespassing, which does come into play in a little bit. Some of my favorite photos from my Last Days of Earth series there are two women, and one is very tall and she is in a pale blue gown, and the other is kind of being smashed up against a wall by the fabric of the gown that the taller woman is wearing. And the gown almost looks like it's overtaking the room, like it's overtaking the other female figure, and there's butterflies everywhere. And I actually work with Ashley Rose. She is a designer that I work with often, and she's amazing. And that particular picture, that woman is wearing an Ashley Rose gown, and the gowns she makes are perfect because I can do things like that. I really love using fabric motion, and when I do that, what I do is I just throw the fabric up in the air, and I'll take about 200 shots of the fabric here and throwing the fabric up here, and then I go into Photoshop and I composite all the shots together, all the ones that look the best. And for that particular one, I decided to do it in the room behind them as well, and that has become one of my favorite photos, and I took that last year, and that was in Gary, Indiana, if I didn't already say that. But yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite photos. The next picture that is one of my favorites is one of my friends. He is a photographer as well, and we went to this abandoned house near where I live, and he's floating in a chair and he has glowing eyes. I actually made a mask with those little headlights, the headlamps, and they light up. So I got a mask and I glued the headlamp into each eye hole, and that's how I got that effect. And I used him twice in the picture, so I just set my tripod up and I had him stand in 2 different positions, and it appears that he is floating in the rocking chair, and that is because there was something in the house. I think it was a giant speaker, and I had put the rocking chair on the speaker, so he was elevated, and I took the pictures, and then I had him gently take the speaker out from under the rocking chair so nothing moved. And when he took the speaker out from the rocking chair, I took another picture, and I took that picture and composited it into the photo, so it appears that there's nothing underneath the rocking chair, so it looks like he's floating. And for a while I really liked doing the floating effect. I think it's very important not to overdo something, and I feel like I did overdo it a little. So I haven't really done it much, but that was definitely one of my favorite photos because it also had kind of like a sci-fi feel to it. And I am trying to do more photos like that, because I feel like a lot of my photos I want them to almost be timeless, as in the viewer can't really tell what time period, almost like a future past. Someone, John Baisley, a very, very good artist, said the term future past to me a few months ago when I was helping doing a video for his band, and that phrase really stuck with me because it's almost like it's futuristic looking, but the house looks very old, there's antiques, and I think that is the look that I really want to work on more. So that is why that is another one of my favorite photos from that series. Another favorite is my underwater photos, and my favorite underwater photo is of model Casey Wilson. She is the same model that I took a photo of on the spiral staircase, and we had gone kayaking that day because around where I live the water is very murky. It's not very clear, so the only water that's clear is mountain water, and there's a river up north in the mountains where you can rent a kayak and you can just go down the river. So we rented a kayak for the day, and we would keep pulling off and taking pictures, and there was trees everywhere that had fallen into the river, which was perfect because taking underwater photos is extremely difficult. Either the photographer keeps floating up or the model keeps floating up, and it's really hard to get a decent shot. So with these trees, it was perfect because she could grab onto a tree and she could stay underwater. So I had her grab onto a tree, and it appears like there's blood coming out of her mouth. And what that is it's just red flavored. It's that flavoring you put in drinks, and it just happened to be red, and I brought that with me hoping that it would have that effect, and sure enough it did. And I absolutely love that photo. It's definitely one of my favorites, and that was one of the photos I took while I was like, that's really cool that I could do that. Like I couldn't believe that I took that photo. Another favorite photo of mine is a model in the ice castles, and that was about an hour from my house, where there was these ice castles that people actually made in the winter, and you could go there and kind of just look around. And once again, I worked with the designer Ashley Rose, and we took pictures really quickly because it's kind of like an amusement park type deal where people pay admission to go look at these ice castles. So we were taking these pictures, and there was like 100 people standing around watching. And I'm actually a really, really fast shooter. So I got that picture probably within 2 minutes. I didn't even bring a tripod that day. I just took my pictures and we left. And that is still one of my favorite photos. Another favorite is of Ryan Matthew Cohn and Regina Cohn at their house in New York City. And Ryan is a collector of oddities, and his collection is absolutely amazing. And the picture, at the time I took that picture, it was very different from everything else I had been doing, because I was doing like a lot of shots in abandonments and whatnot. And I had a friend on Facebook had tagged me that Ryan was looking for a photographer to photograph him and his wife. And I used to watch the TV show he was on. The TV show was called Oddities, and it was on the Science Channel. And I used to watch it all the time because that was right up my alley. I love anything weird and strange, and I collect a lot of, bizarre stuff myself. So I knew who he was, and I emailed him, and I was like, I really want to take pictures of you. I noticed you were looking for a photographer, so here I am. And yeah, he agreed to let me take photos, and he actually set up that entire dinner table himself. And it was kind of cool, and it was weird because for once I didn't have to really set anything up. And I'm so used to really working hard and setting up all my own scenes that it was kind of nice. It was cool to see that someone was that into me taking their photo. And I love it. The way he set up the table, the way they're looking at each other. And my Last Days of Earth series, a lot of people ask me this, so I'm trespassing 90% of the time. I don't have permission. It's almost impossible to get permission. I've tried dozens of times, and I'm always told no. So I need to get the shot. I see a place that I like. So to me, the risk is, risk versus reward, and the risk is worth it. So a lot of people ask me, like, do you bring the stuff in? Like, where do you get all the stuff in the house? And to be honest, when I go to an abandoned place, it's hard enough to get myself in there, especially because I'm trespassing. I'm certainly not going to be outside with a giant truck loading in furniture. So absolutely not. I don't bring any of my props or anything. To be honest, other than the shoot with Ryan and Regina, where that was their actual home. To be honest, when I find these places, everything is in there, and I'm very picky about the places I find. I do like when there's old wallpaper and antique furniture, vintage furniture. And so most of the time these houses are absolutely destroyed. They look like someone ransacked them, and I never really know what happened. Maybe the owners died, maybe they moved, and I don't know. So when I go into these places, I completely clean it. I will, some of these places have about 3 feet of junk on the ground. So I clear out a room, and then I go through the house and I pick out everything that I want in the photo. Maybe a TV, maybe some pictures, some crutches, a chair, and I set everything up. So I actually, technically, I do my own set design It's just not on a set I own or that I'm supposed to be on. But yeah, so I set up all my own scenes. I don't get any help with that. And that's actually the part that I really, really enjoy, especially in my Last Days of Earth series. Setting up my own scenes has a huge part to play in it. Another favorite photo of mine is of model Melanie Gatos, and she is actually wearing a gown by Ashley Rose again, and she's in front of this giant stage, and there's a piano near her, and it looks like her dress is water, and it looks like there's a little ship sailing on her dress, and there's clouds as well. And how I did that is I flipped the dress, as I had explained before, and I had made a stand for the ship, and the ship was on a stand on top of the piano, and I would flip the dress underneath the ship a bunch of times so it looked like, you know, the dress was water that the ship was sailing on. And you know, this is a prime example of a lot of people ask me how I get my ideas, if my ideas mean anything. And it's hard for me to explain that. Usually I just come up with ideas. My ideas are more feelings that just happen to come out visually. And sometimes I get ideas by watching movies or reading or listening to music. But my ideas are really organic, and they just come from a very deep place. And a lot of people ask me what this particular picture means, and I really don't have an answer. It's something that just came from deep inside me that, you know, I thought of the idea and I did it, and it happened to be one of my favorite pictures. Another favorite picture of mine from that series is a girl who is laying on a bed, and that is also in an abandoned house, and she is where the designer is Ashley Rose for this shoot as well. And this was one of the first times I really did that dress flipping, and I kind of wanted to make it look like she's just like it's almost like sleep paralysis, or maybe she's having a nightmare, or you know, I often have the element of, in my pictures, you don't know if it's real, if it's someone dreaming, and I do that because I unfortunately get lumped into the horror category a lot, and I don't really like that. I don't want my pictures to be anything horror related. But I do want people to be a little bit uncomfortable, and I think that's why some people, you either love or you hate my photos, because it's very almost subliminally uncomfortable. I like to do things that kind of seem a little out of place just to make the viewer feel kind of like you have to question what's going on. And I think that's important with art, that you have to feel something. And for me, the feeling just happens to be uncomfortableness, or like a feeling like something doesn't belong. And once again, that just reflects how I feel in life. I'm very uncomfortable. I have trouble, you know, going out in crowds. The older I get, the more I don't want to be around people. I just feel very alienated, and I think that shows a lot in my photos. It shows how I feel internally. It's basically that portrayed into a photo.